Remember your ancient past. Hello, everybody. This is my channel. Thank you guys for tuning in to the readings of the Ancient Secret of the Flower of Life. And I'm going to kick this video off with chapter. We're finishing up chapter 4 in the book. And this one goes into memory, magnetic fields, and Merkabahs. So before I start, let's do these frequencies. Frequency Hertz C256. Memory, magnetic fields, and Merkabahs. If the people on the warships hadn't been protected by the Merkabah during that change, they would have completely lost their memories. You see, our memory is held together primarily by a magnetic field that exists around the brain, inside the skull, and around the head. That field is further connected to every cell in the brain by individualized magnetic fields within each cell. Science first found the internal magnetic particles within each cell and then found the larger outer field. This was the first new find in human physiology in the last 300 years. Memory is dependent on a steady, living magnetic field, very much like a computer. Its connection to the Earth's magnetic field is not understood by science at this time. If you don't have means of protecting your memory, it will be erased, gone. It'll be like unplugging a computer in the middle of a file. It's just gone. That's exactly what happened to the Atlanteans and others who survived the catastrophe, but who didn't have spinning Merkabahs. Those very sophisticated people who were more advanced than you and I suddenly found themselves in a situation where they didn't know anything. They had high-tech bodies and high-tech minds, but it was like having a great PC sitting on the table with no software, nothing there. So the population that survived, and there were a few, had to start all over again. They had to begin at square one to figure out how to stay warm, how to make a fire, and so on. This loss of memory was the result of their forgetting how to breathe, forgetting their Merkabahs, forgetting everything, falling down through the dimensions, going into a totally unprotected state and ending up in this very dense world, having to eat food again, doing all kinds of things that hadn't been part of our experience for a very long time. They were slammed into a very dense aspect of the planet and had to learn to survive all over again. This was all a result of the synthetic Merkabah experiment that had taken place on Atlantis. Without that small group of ascended masters, we would not have survived at all. We definitely would all have left human experience. The whole Earth experiment would have been over forever, but they kept the field alive, just barely, while everything else crashed around them. Besides the Ascended Masters, there were also two other groups on Earth who had Merkabah fields intact at the time. The Nephilim and the Syrians, our mother and father, kept their fields alive. I don't know where the Nephilim retreated to within this planet's dimensional worlds, but the Syrians remain in the halls of Amenti. Inside the inner Earth, both of these groups are still here on Earth, on the planet, hidden within the dimensional worlds. What the Thoth group did after light returned. After the 3.5 days of darkness and Earth reappeared, Light reappeared. The field stabilized themselves, and we were down in third dimensional world where we are now. Everything was new and different. Everything. It had totally changed experimentally. When we considered the landmass of Atlantis, the Atlanteans had really been on a much higher level of interpreting that landmass. They didn't experience it like we do. It was experienced in a totally different way that's pretty hard to explain from our third dimensional point of view. After they landed on top of the Great Pyramid, Ra and about a third of the people from the ship went down through a tunnel that goes into a room at the two-third level, which will someday be discovered. They've discovered 4 new rooms in the Great Pyramid in only the last few years. When this room is discovered, they'll find that it's made with red, black, and white stones, which were the primary architectural colors of Atlantis. This is what Thoth told me to say. From this room is a channel they use to descend to a city or a temple far below the pyramid, which Thoth and friends built when they built the pyramid. It was designed to hold approximately 10,000 people because they knew a large number would ascend over the next 13,000 years until the day of purification. After the field stabilized, a third of the people followed Ra into the room made of red, black, and white stones. From there, they entered the underground city and began the route of our present civilization. Another part of the route was being formed at the same time in Sumer. Another story. At the same moment in time, the remaining 1,067 or so ascended masters lifted the warship off the Great Pyramid and flew to the place now called Lake Titicaca, where they landed on the island of the Sun in Bolivia. Thoth got off there, along with about a third of the people. Then they took off again and flew to the Himalayan mountains, where Aragot got off with the remaining third of the people. 7 people, however, remained with the ship, flew it back to the Sphinx, and lowered it into that room where it has remained for the last 13,000 years until recently, when the young woman from Peru raised it again into the open blue skies of Mother Earth's atmosphere. Scarce sites on the grid. Egypt became the male component of the grid. That is where the male structures were laid out. There's hardly any femaleness there compared to female areas of the world. Of course, the polarity of maleness does exist. Isis is that counterpart. But the overall energy flow is male. South America, especially Peru, Central America, and also parts of Mexico, became the female component of the grid. However, ultimately, the entire female aspect of the grid became centered at the complex in Uxmal in the Yucatan, where many survivors from Atlantis had found refuge. Starting at Uxmal, 7 temples are laid out in a spiral, probably a Fibonacci spiral, and they are the 7 primary temples of the female component of the grid. These are chakra centers, just like the chakra centers that are laid out down the length of the Nile. These feminine centers begin with Uxmal, then go to Labna, then go to then over to Chichen Itza, then over to Tulan near the ocean, then way down near Belize to Gohun Leach, curving back inland to Palenque, excuse me. Those 7 places created the primary spiral of the feminine aspect of the grid, being created for our new Christ consciousness, which we are only now able to access. From Palenque, the female aspect of the grid splits north and south. Here we see another polarization of the energy. The feminine component of the female spiral of the grid heads south and jumps over to Tikal in Guatemala, and that begins a new octave. When we relate it to music, the seventh sight bridges to the eighth note, or the beginning of the next octave of the next spiral, and the spiral keeps going south through the feminine component of the grid. Eventually, it moves through places like Machu Picchu and Sacsayhuaman near Cusco, Peru. One of the main spirals ends in a place called Chavin in Peru, which was the primary religious center of the Incan Empire. From there, it goes to Lake Titicaca to a place about a half a mile off the island of the Sun in Bolivia. Then it makes a 90-degree turn and heads out towards Easter Island and finally to Moria, where it anchors into the earth. Heading north from Palenque is the male component of the female aspect of the grid. It goes through the Aztec ruins and up through the American Indian pyramids. The American Indians made physical pyramids, some remains of which can be seen in and around Albuquerque, New Mexico. Then the spiral continues to Blue Lake near Taos, New Mexico, which is a counterpart of Lake Titicaca. This is one of the most important areas in the United States, protected for a long time by the Taos Indians. Again, there's a 90-degree turn at Blue Lake. From there, the spiral heads out across the mountains, going through Ute Mountains on the New Mexico side of the Colorado border, and through many mountains and structures that have been built. In conjunction with the scared sites, the creators also use mountains because of their vortex energy. Finally, before the spiral leaves the coast of California, it passes through Lake Tahoe, Donner Lake, and Pyramid Lake. From there, it goes through underwater mountain complexes until it reaches the Hawaiian island, where Haleakala crater is one of the primary components. Then heads south again. It goes through the Hawaiian Islands chain that connects for thousands of miles all the way back to Moria. So it's a huge open circle that comes around the earth, starting at Uxmal and connecting at the south pole of the Christ grid. The feminine component of the grid is a massive circle of complexes underneath that in between each of the major sites mentioned above are literally hundreds of similar sites, churches and temples of many religious scared sites of nature, such as mountain peaks and ranges, lakes, canyons, and so on. If you could see the greater plane, you would see how they form perfect spirals, first moving clockwise, then moving counterclockwise, until they reach their destination, Moria, in the South Pacific. The pyramids built in the Himalayan mountains were primarily crystalline in nature, meaning they were constructed by using third-dimensional crystals at the corners, aimed to form a pyramid. They built physical pyramids there, too, lots of them. Most of them are not known, though some are. The largest known pyramid in the world so far is the one western mountain of Tibet. In the western mountain of Tibet, It's a solid white pyramid that's in an almost perfect condition with a huge solid crystal capstone. At least 2 teams of scientists have been there, and it has also been photographed from the air. It's visible only 3 weeks out of the year when its crystal capstone peers out of the deep snow to view a valley long deserted from human endeavor. I talked with the leader of the team that went into this pyramid. He said it looks like a brand new pyramid and that there's nothing written on the walls. It's white, smooth, and hard like marble. When they entered it, They went down a long tunnel where they found a large room in the center. There's no writing anywhere, no designs, no nothing, except that in the middle, high up on a wall, there is one inscription: the flower of life. That's it. If you want to say everything, all you have to do is put that on a wall. That says it all. By the end of this book, you'll understand why. All the scared sites on Earth, with a few exceptions, were planned on a fourth dimensional level by higher consciousness, and by now most have third dimensional counterparts connected to them. In other words, real buildings on real sites. However, there are still some very important sites that have only fourth dimensional structures. Those fourth dimensional pyramids primarily represent the neutral or child energy of the Christ grid. Altogether, there are three aspects of the Christ grid that surround the earth: mother, father, and child. The father is in Egypt, the mother is in Peru, Yucatan, South Pacific, and the child is in Tibet. Maybe that's like that movie, The Golden Child, the Golden Child from Tibet. You know, the Golden Child. Remember, you are golden. I'm trying to do my best at reading this, so bear with me. I'm trying to focus. So if you like the reading, thumbs up. If you don't, thumbs down. Let me know. According to Thoth, there are 5 different levels of consciousness. Okay, sorry, I didn't read the new little paragraph. Okay, my bad. The 5 levels of consciousness and their chromosomal differences. According to Thoth, there are 5 different levels of consciousness possible here on Earth. These are people who have different DNA, completely different bodies, and different ways of perceiving the reality. Each level of consciousness grows from the last one until finally, on the 5th level, humanity learns how to translate into a whole new manner of expressing life, leaving Earth forever. The primary visual difference between these types is their height. The first level people are about 4 to 6 feet tall. The second level people are about 5 to 7 feet tall. Where we are at now, the third level people are about 10 to 16 feet tall, which we are about to translate to. The fourth level beings is about 30 to 35 feet tall, and the last is about 50 to 60 feet tall. These last 2 levels are for the distant future. This may seem strange at first, but do we not begin as a microscopic egg and get larger and larger until we are born? Then we continue to grow taller and taller until we are adults. According to this theory, the human adult is not the end of our growth pattern. We continue through DNA steps until we are 50 to 60 feet tall. Metatron, the Hebrew archangel, who is the perfection of what humanity is supposed to become, is 55 feet tall. Remember, the giants who lived here on Earth referred to in chapter 6 of Genesis? According to the Sumerian records, they were about 10 to 16 feet tall. When we look at a 3-year-old and a 10-year-old, we know that they have different levels of consciousness, and it is primarily by their height that we make this judgment. According to Thoth, each level of consciousness has different DNAs. However, the primary difference is the number of chromosomes. Using this theory, we are now on the second level and have 44 plus 2 chromosomes. An example of the first level is certain Aboriginal tribes in Australia, where they have 42 plus 2 chromosomes. On the third level, which we are about to move to, people have 46 to 2 chromosomes. The next 2 levels have 48 to 2 and 50 to 2 respectively. We will discuss this in depth. in the second volume of this book and show the scared geometry around this understanding, which will make clear. Which will make it clear. Sorry, I'm like chopping some words up. That's why I recommend you get this book, and this is my rough translation, and forgive me. But this is very interesting, right? The chromosomes, we know people are really tall in our time. They have been. I think the guy was like 9 feet tall back in like 1920s. I forget his name, Jeffrey something. Jeffrey the giraffe. No, but and then there's it's in Egypt. It's a building. It's like a stone building, but you don't really go inside there. And they showed it on these channels I follow. But basically, on the wall somewhere up there, like they show like a guy, and he's like, his knee is above a cow, and a cow's like 5 feet tall, so they're like as big as us, and like his knee is right there, and it's so crazy, and stuff like that they don't really show. They don't show these kinds of things in like history class, and I'm just thinking about this other topic, but it's kind of related to this, but it was not about the giants, but it was about nuclear war, but it just popped in my head. About Dwarka. No, it was not Dwarka. Munjaro. Munjaro. Okay, I'm gonna just stop right there. But I digress. It was like nuclear war. But anyways, okay, here I go back. Okay, going back. The evidence in Egypt for a new look at history. We're now going to focus on Egypt, because Egypt happens to be where the main mystery school was located, and where evidence of the different sized humans and levels of consciousness still remain. Though generally unrecognized, Egypt was the area they chose where they would ultimately restore our consciousness, and the primary area where survivors from Atlantis and the ascended masters were in one place. We could discuss the history of those other areas, and we will a little, but the focus for this work will be on the Father, because it is through the Father that the primary information of the Merkaba must be remembered. This is an Egyptian statue of Thea. Thea and her husband A were the first two to create a baby by interdimensionally connecting through the scared tantra, which led to immortality for all three: the father, the mother, and the child. You can get a pretty good idea what Lemurians look like from looking at her. She and her husband are still alive, and they're still on the planet today, even after tens of thousands of years. They're two of the oldest beings in the world, and two of the most respected of all the ascended masters, because of all they've done for the human consciousness. I'm sure you guys seen this. Tia. She's my tia. She's my auntie. So, what do you guys think so far? You guys believe in giants, people, little people, fairy people, all kinds of things. And in Egypt, like I think 2 years ago, I read an article that they found like Pokemon kind of characters, androgynous, like I don't know, they're like creatures, like pets, I guess. But they found a 5-legged cat mummified with 3 tails. They compared it to a Pokemon character. I don't know its name, but they compared it to that. They found this other creature, I think like similar to the cat, but they didn't really say what it was. And they said they found a whole bunch of other stuff, but it's kind of like classified, like not really classified, but they're like slowly, putting out there like. And I'm sure they have found like so much freaking androgynous beings, like they have in Cusco and Peru, the elongated skulls. It's all real. All these things, and it's very fascinating what's going on in this world right now. A lot of interesting information, and the world's basically burning up. And let's Burn it up. Burn some books, huh? No. This is Abu Simbad. Eat giants in the land. Okay, excuse me. Giants in the land. This is Umbal Simbad in Egypt, which is located at the base of the spine in the chakra system of the masculine aspect of Christ's grid. Notice how very tall these statues are. This was the actual height of these beings. Compare it to the size of the Taurus near the bottom right in the photo. If these stone folks were to stand up, they would be in that 60-foot range, which indicates that they were at the fifth level of consciousness. These beings, 4 to 12, on a different wall at Abu Simbel would be about 35 feet tall, representing the fourth level of consciousness. They built rooms for these different heights. This doorway is made for the Venusians, the Hathors, who are on the third level of consciousness. I'll tell you more about the Hathors later. Excuse me. These third level beings are about 16 feet tall, indicating they are male, as the female of this race are about 10 to 12 feet tall. In their section of the building, the rooms are around 20 feet high, with ceilings and beams in proportion to 10 to 16 feet tall beams. Next to that room, though, a little doorway, you can't see it here, that looks like it's made for us, a little room with a much lower ceiling. The Egyptians didn't make these statues arbitrarily. They never did anything arbitrarily. There isn't a single scratch on a single stone. There is not even one. I believe that was done unconsciously. There was a reason and a purpose for everything, and usually it was created on many, many different levels. The emerald tablets, for example, are written on 100 levels of consciousness. Depending on who you are, you'll understand something utterly and completely different from other people. If you should go through a consciousness change, go back and reread the emerald tablets again. You won't believe it's the same book because it'll talk to you in a different way depending on your understanding. And I suggest you guys, I have it on my playlist and I'll put it on this video. The Emerald Tablets by Dorel, and he was a ascended master from like 1920, and he was a pretty smart guy. He was a PhDer, and he said he didn't go to the place first he said he went there physically, this place, I can't recollect where, and he got all the information. Then he told people that he got it through like a projection, he went there astral projectily, and I don't really know, but there's a lot of interesting stuff in that, those readings, and I listen to them a lot. Since I found out about them, I've been hearing them steady for the last 2 years now, I think, and there's a lot of interesting information, and I had some illumination manifestations. I didn't really discuss about it, but in last year in December 1st, I woke up. Okay, I had a beer, but I don't know. That's not nothing to do with it. But I would drink like one beer. I went to sleep like at 1:30 a.m. and I just like lay down and then I just woke up like I had to use the restroom. It was like 3:30, right? Well, I know because I checked the time after this happened, and I got up. And I felt like so energetic. I felt like all this energy was like I was moving fast, And I got up, started walking. As soon as I started walking, a big like flash came out of like my chest, like this whole like it lit up, boom, like fast. And I was like, oh, what the heck? Like, and I was like, was it the TV? Was it like something right there? Like, but the light felt like it came out of my right here, like it went through me or it came out. Like it was just like a light right here, like a flash. And the emerald tablets talk about illumination, lighting up rooms, and illumination, that our body can do all these things. And I usually hear the emerald tablets when I go to sleep, so I can go inside my mind subconsciously. So I catch myself mumbling, having crazy dreams, and I just wanted to share that. I was gonna do a video right when it happened, but I was like, I mean, no one really cares, not cares, but whoever's really watching or hearing this, like, would be like, oh, that's pretty interesting, but people wouldn't even believe it. Like, I tell somebody that, like, it would be like, you're crazy, or And I even looked, was it the light? Was it the series, Alexa? It wasn't none of that. It like came out of here. So it's just that was like that. So I suggest you guys get into those tablets and study them day and night. Like, you want to learn all these things. You want to be enlightened. You want this information, and it says like books will come to you like that you're supposed to read. But sometimes you won't even read a book. Like, it's hard. Some people, I like reading and then I don't. It's like I like it and I had just to be in the mood. Quiet location or setting or something. But this book, great book to have. Keep saying it. And I could have read this book right away when I bought it, but it's all in due time. And I'm gonna buy the second volume, and we're gonna get into that one too. But let's just finish this one up. These are Earth beings passing through the various levels of consciousness. In this photo, you see a huge 50-foot tall being with a statue or size standing by his leg. This is the king and queen. Archaeologists don't know how to interpret this, so they just say that the kings were more important than the queens, and that's why they made her little. But it didn't have anything to do with that. The statues are showing the levels of consciousness. Every king and pharaoh who ever lived in Egypt had 5 names, representing the 5 levels of consciousness. Some of the kings and queens were able to translate between the different levels in order to guide the population into the spiritual realms. One special example of this still exists in Egypt. There's an ancient roundhouse. I didn't get to see it, but it was described to me by the famous archaeologist Ahmed Fahad. So I know it's real. This was ANT's house for a long time, though they're obviously not using it now. This roundhouse has a wall down the middle. You can't get from one side of the house to the other without going outside, walking around, and coming in the other side. Does this sound like the island of Undal in Atlantis? On one side of the middle wall is a picture of A, who looks very Egyptian with his angled skirt, beard, and various Egyptian paraphernalia. He appears of normal height. On the other side of the wall, A's image is about 15 feet tall. He looks very different, but you can see that his face is the same. He has a huge skull going way back like the higher level races do. I'll show you soon. These 2 pictures of A show that he could go back and forth between these 2 different levels of awareness by changing consciousness. Yeah, and then you guys ever seen The Fifth Element? Like, it just reminded me of like the 5th names, 5th levels. Because the 5th element was like love, and that's basically what this is about. It's like loving your brother and sister, loving each other on this planet, and all we do is hate each other, kill each other, and are the future civilizations ever gonna change? And that's why they're like, we're not ready to become a type 1 civilization because we're like -1, Stair-step evolution. According to Melchizdek, Knowledge, both the Sumerians and the Egyptians merged into the surface of the earth at almost the same moment, complete, whole, and perfect, with their language totally intact, with all their skills and understanding and knowledge, with almost no evolution prior to that time, at least none that science knows of. They simply appeared at one moment in history in their most perfect state. The writing that came out at that moment was extremely sophisticated and clear, and has never been improved on since. After that initial impulse, these cultures became less and less clear, until finally these advanced civilizations degenerated way. You would think they would get better and more sophisticated as time advanced, but that's not what happened. This is scientific fact. No one in conventional archaeology knows how this happened or can even explain how it could have happened. It's a great mystery. Egypt and Sumer are placed into a special category called star step evolution by archaeologists. They were given this classification because of how they seemed to gain information and knowledge. What happened was one day Egypt forgot its language, full and complete. Then that knowledge leveled off. Then a little while later, they would know everything you could possibly imagine about. Perhaps building a certain kind of moat or water system. A little more time would go by, and then they would suddenly know everything about hydraulics. It would keep going on and on like that. How did the Egyptians and Sumerians get this information? How did they study suddenly in one day know everything? I'll give you the office answer. First, I need to make this clear on the precision drawing repeated below 4 to 15. Point A is where we are now, and point C is when the fall of Atlantis happened. Point C is also when the poles shifted. Science has determined that's when it happened. That's also when the great flood of Noah happened, and the melting of the ice caps, because all of the changes that were occurring on Earth. Point C is when the destruction occurred. Remember, I mentioned earlier that there were two other points, B and D, when change could also take place and be assimilated most easily. For a 6,000 year time span from point C, where the destruction happened, to point D, where the new teachings could be given, the ascended masters had to sit and wait while the Atlanteans, who were now hairy barbarians in Egypt, slowly returned to that state where they could accept this new yet ancient knowledge. These approximately 1,600 ascended masters had been living under the Great Pyramid since the fall, and they had to wait 6,000 years before they could start teaching and building the new culture. So I don't think I shared with you guys in this channel, but before I came in contact with this book in 2010, a couple months before, like I was, always into like history and ancient like stuff. So I was always watching like the History Channel and all this stuff. So like I had two dreams. Could have been three, but the two for sure I remember. I went into the first dream. I visited the Golden Pyramid with the Mayans, and it was behind a waterfall, and I was being guided by a person in this dream. And then the second dream that I had back to back, it was in Egypt. I was in Egypt, and I was being guided again by this Egyptian guide, and he was guiding us, and we went on top of the Sphinx's paw. We went through a opening under there, and we went underground, and then there was like pillars, rows of pillars. It was like so vast. It was like I was like, what the heck? And as soon as we walked in there, like it felt like I was watching a video, like I was in a video game, like. And then I woke up, you know. And I think like around that time, I didn't know that there was like a hidden chamber in the Sphinx's paw. I might have like briefly heard about it. I don't think I like it was that in my mind, you know. Like it just like came to this dream just came to me. Like these dreams came to me like back to back. It was so strange. And yeah, and then around that time there was this guy. His name was Ali, in search of the world's history's mysteries or something on this cable channel. But I had to go to work that night. But I never seen that episode. But he was in search of the Mayan Golden Temple. But in the when I was watching the TV, like he's on a bridge, like a water bridge, and in my dream I had that same dream, like we were crossing a bridge in the jungle, and it was like a water, and the guy was telling me, oh, the golden pyramid is behind that waterfall. So when we descended down, then suddenly we're walking, the next part of the dream, we're walking down like a square, you know, corridor, and it's like carved out perfect, like a walkway. And we come to the center, and the guy, then this dream's in like 2010, like the beginning of the year, and he touches like the center of the wall, like something, and he touches it, and the wall like backs up, and it goes down, and it like becomes a ramp. And then like I go in there, and then that's when I realized, oh, I'm dreaming. This is a dream. And that's I always been into like dreams and stuff, because I always had dreams like as a kid, like about the future and different things and past lives, and I never understood it like how I do now as a kid. You know, I just thought like I'm just weird. Why am I dreaming like all these different things, like dinosaurs, Mars, like me, other people, different times. I don't know. It's just so strange. But so I had that dream, and then I came across this book, and I was like, oh, let me just read it. And it's just all these things, you know, these patterns, and they talk about patterns a lot too. And sometimes you just gotta follow the patterns. And yeah, I guess that was just that dream. I just wanted to share that. And I'm like big on dreams and stuff like that. So I try to share my dreams a lot in my channel, because I think it's like related to this reality, this dream that we're living, a wake dream. I guess we're sleepwalking in this dream. Okay. The Tat Brotherhood. Thoth's son Tat remained in Egypt with Ra after the fall. Later, this group became known as the Tat Brotherhood. Even today, there's an external brotherhood in Egypt called the Tat Brotherhood. Physical people who are the protectors and keepers of the scared temples. Hidden behind current Tat Brotherhood are the Ascended Masters. So the immortal aspect of the Tat Brotherhood sat there waiting and waiting, observing and waiting until the time when the Egyptians could receive their teachings. When that day finally came, which was the birth of Sumer and Egypt, the Tat Brotherhood watched until they found either a person or a group of Egyptians who were ready for the ancient knowledge. Then 1, 2, or 3 members of the Brotherhood appeared in bodies looking just like the people they were about to teach. They would go up to the surface, approach a person or group, and give them the information outright. They flat out said, "Hey, look at this. Did you know that if you did this and this and this, that this is what will happen?" The Egyptians would say, "Wow, look at that." They would use the knowledge, thus creating a new step in their evolution. Then the men and women from the Brotherhood would go back under the pyramid. The Egyptians who were given these teachings would give it to the rest of the culture. The culture would quickly ascend to the next step. The Egyptians would assimilate that for a while. Then the Brotherhood would look for another group that was ready for the next subject. They'd go to the surface again and say, "Look, here's everything you want to know about this." They simply gave it to them. The ascended masters gave the people this information over a short period of time, and their evolution simply shot up and up in stair steps. The parallel evolution in Sumer. This same evolutionary pattern was also occurring in Sumer, though the present historical line says that Egypt began in approximately 3300 BC and Sumer began 500 years earlier in about 3800 BC. I believe they both started at almost the same moment. I think that if historians would get their dates accurate, they discovered that both Sumer and Egypt started only a few years apart. However, the evolution in Sumer was led by the Nephilim, the mother aspect, and the one in Egypt was led by the Syrians, the father aspect. That's the primary difference. I think the mother and the father agreed. Now is the time for our children to remember. I believe it was a parental decision, and that when researchers look very carefully, they'll find that both countries started to blossom at the same moment in time, which was tied to the point in the precisional orbit, point D, when it was most likely to be successful. This is also how the Sumerians knew about the precision of the equinox. It takes 2,106 years to recognize that there is a precision of the equinoxes. I think it's just one word, equinox. But the reason the Sumerians knew about it was because the Nephilim said, "Do you know there's a precision of the equinox?" Very simple. It's not a complicated thing. They just explained it all and the people wrote it down. The Sumerians knew about events that went back 450,000 years because they were given the information. They simply wrote it down and applied it. But after these ancient cultures got all this brilliant information, they degenerated. Why would they degenerate instead of going higher? Because they were in the sleep cycle, the falling asleep portion of the precision. They were falling more and more asleep with each breath, right into the Kali Yuga, the most asleep moment of the cycle. In the middle of the Kali Yuga, 2,000 years ago, was the time of Jesus, and humans were sound asleep and snoring. People in the Kali Yuga who read books and other studies written in the earlier, more awake period had a difficult time fully understanding what was being written about. Why? Because they were relatively unconscious. This is why cultures all over the world, not just in Egypt and Sumer, degenerated until they cease. Right now, we are about to awaken fully and know the truth of our beingness. So yeah, it seems like it's like deja vu's playing itself out again because everyone's in deja vu. I mean, everyone's sleeping, and how Robert Seffer says in his book, Amnesia, Ancient Amnesia. So we forget. It's because we're being reborn and we're forgetting all our past lives, and because the memory field is all distorted, and some people pick it up, like little bits and pieces of data that you have dreams, and people might not say that. People might say that dreams are just hocus pocus, like. But if you read the Bible and you know anything about anything, like the dreams were there had dream interpreters, the kings and queens, like all through different kingdoms. They used the seers and the mystics to see the future, right? To like interpret the dreams, like what does it mean? What did these dreams mean? And I take dreams very informational. Like I try to see what was the purpose of dream. Was like just an adventure? Was it a sci-fi? Was I just there to have fun and just to escape this reality? Because a lot of dreams I have, I'm just like flying, doing like crazy things that like, and I'm like, why am I like? Is it because all these like cartoons, all these things I've been watching? But maybe it's just in ourselves. We are superhuman, and our ancient bodies were like superhuman, and our future bodies will be just as superhuman, and our bodies right now are superhuman. There's a lot of superhumans at this time and moment, and you just gotta unlock it. You gotta unlock your subconscious, your conscious, your chromosome, your telomeres. You gotta like meditate. You gotta like expand your energy inside your brain, because your brain is a quantum computer that could like figure out anything. And when you go to sleep, that's when it processes all the information and puts it all together, and it shows you in different things, and it sends you different messengers and people that you look up to, or you like respect, or someone that will come and guide you. And you follow the patterns, and you follow the symbols, and pick up a book or once and read something. You never know what kind of information might open up your mind, might awaken you. And there's a lot of people sleeping right now, and they're saying they're woke, but it's just not the real wokeness. It's like a synthetic wokeness. It's not real, like they're like being forced kind of like to wake up. And some people are naturally been waking up since they were born, and there's some people that wake up with all their memories intact and can detail their past lives, as many as lives they had, and it's very interesting that there's these avatars out here that are just so enlightened, and if you're an ascended master, come to me. Come to pop up. Whoa! It's like just popping from dimensions and stuff. It's like, okay. Here we go. We'll keep secrets in Egypt, key to a new view of history. This is Saqqara. According to the linear archaeological belief, this is where the Egyptian culture began. This pyramid was the first to be built in Egypt. By their way of thinking, when it was first created, it was covered with beautiful white stones. In fact, this whole city stretches for miles and miles and into the earth hundreds of feet, including buildings and complexes under the ground. This would have been amazing if you could have seen it when it was brand new, especially since only a short time in history before it was built, we were supposedly all hairy barbarians. There was a jump from hairy barbarians to this super sophisticated culture in only a second of archaeological time. This is a pyramid that I think destroys the belief that Saqqara is where it all began. The pyramid is at least 500 years older than Saqqara. If this is true, the time when the Egyptians emerged on the earth is identical to the time the Sumerians emerged, which I believe is exactly what happened. This pyramid is called the Heret, a phonetic spelling, and it's one of the few unguarded pyramids in this category. There are quite a few of these step pyramids called mastabas. The Egyptians have taken almost all these pyramids that approach or exceed 6,000 years of age and put military bases and huge electrical fences around them. In some cases, they got soldiers on ground with machine guns. If you try to approach these pyramids, they would probably try to kill you. They don't want anyone to know about these pyramids, and they especially don't want you to examine them. If you try to talk to any Egyptian about them or ask to see them, they play it down. The pyramid that destroys the Saqqara theory, one of the two flat blocks in foreground has carved Star of David. Looks so interesting, huh? Okay, we're about to finish the 4th chapter. I went through this. They would say, it's not important. They're just made out of little adobe bricks by primitive people. They're nothing to them. And I'd say, well, can I go see one? Nah, it's just a waste of time. Don't do it. I had to keep pushing and pushing because I wanted to see one. I was brought into various government offices and I kept saying, please, can I just go see one? And they would say, no, no, no. Finally, I had to give bribes to get into these places. One government official wanted 8,000 to sneak me in there at night without any cameras, just to look at it for 15 minutes, then get away. This is how closely they protect these structures. Finally, after a long ordeal, I found out about one of these pyramids that was not on military base because there was a little village around it, about half an hour from Saqqara. Once I realized that I didn't have to go through any government red tape, I finally found a person who was connected with that village. I had to pay him a lot of money. It wasn't thousands, but it was hundreds to go there. So we drove into the village. I had to go to the leader to ask permission and pay him money too. Then I was allowed to go there for 30 minutes but not take any pictures. I managed to get this one photograph, and that was all. Not only was this pyramid there, but there were pyramids all over the place, everywhere, for what I estimated to be 10 miles around. At one time, this was a major complex. They're not doing anything to take care of it because they know that this pyramid is probably older than 6,000 years. So I found out that these unimportant pyramids were not so unimportant after all. The stones that covered this pyramid, like the Slatine ones shown in figure 14 and 17, probably weighed 60 to 80 tons a piece. They were very sophisticated, even though the internal part of the pyramid was made with adobe bricks. On top of a block beside the base was a circle with a Star of David, the key to the Merkaba experience. A ramp goes down maybe 200 feet to the river below. The pyramid is still working, still functioning. It's pumping water. Pyramids pump water. They've demonstrated this in the United States now. If you build a pyramid right, they'll pump water with no moving parts. So this pyramid fills up with water and has to be pumped dry before anyone can enter. To top all this off, I just happened to sit next to an American linguistics team when I was flying back home. Pure luck, of course, who happened to have just entered this pyramid. Very few people can go in there, but this was a team of 30. He told me about the writing inside that was definitely older than Saqqara. There is geometrical writing all over the walls. I would love to see that. This guy was very excited as he told me that this team of 30 linguistics experts who got to see the inside now believe that the key to all languages in the world is in that pyramid. I believe he's probably correct. He understood scared geometry, and as you will soon discover, scared geometry is the root of all languages in the universe. And that is true. Next chapter, Egypt's role in the evolution of consciousness, chapter 5. So what do you guys think? Mumbo jumbo or real dealio? Is it the real deal? Is it people's just bad trips? Or what is the flower of life? And like what is it? It's patterns. It's a consciousness. It's a beautiful image that just it's embedded in a lot of different cultures all over the world, and they're all seeing the same thing. Seeing the same thing. Beautiful geometry. They seen that this was the geometry of the building blocks of plants and the spirals and the Fibonacci's, and they've seen it play out everywhere. And it's just the energy. It's like it's there, and we just gotta tap into it and reach it and grab it and utilize it for our advantage. And remember your ancient past. So let me know you guys' ideas, thoughts, comments. What do you guys think? Are we living a simulation? Has this already happened? Is this just a big dream and we're just reliving the experience with technology, cell phones? We can document all these things for future generations, and it's all in the cloud, and I'm gonna upload this, and hopefully it gets to the right people that are interested in these type of topics. And I'm sure you can find better people that can articulate better and explain things better than I could. And I'm just doing my format, my way, my approach. And if you guys want to learn with me and want to read this book with me, trial and error, and we'll keep advancing. We'll go get the second volume, and if you guys want me to read a book or buy a book to read on the channel, let me know what book. I'm very interested. I keep saying I want to read the Mahabharatas. That's the one I really want to read. I've been hearing the audio, so I don't know. I'm just trying to find it like the original version, I guess, or like the version that's like the original version, I guess, but that's more like I can understand. I really want to read a lot of the Indian history, because like I feel like that's an important part too, because they have a lot of androgynous beings in India, and there's still like statues, a lot of history, mythology about them, and Egypt is kind of like lost, all the androgynous beings. And growing up in going to school in America, they always said they didn't look like this. It was just like an interpretation of what they look like. And I always thought like cool, like a cat person, like I don't know, in my mind I was just so fascinated. I was like, these things exist, like, and then it's like no, and I was just like, oh, okay. But why? Like, why animals? Like, and people found out already. Like that the Thundercat show, like back in the '80s. I didn't really get into it, but I did watch it here and there, and I did like it. But I was like, it was already past my time. I was like, it was like ending, I think, when I was growing up. But like that cartoon, people are talking about it like that's like real. Like there was a big war between the reptilians and the cats and stuff. So you never know. Like we're not the only people on this planet that are here, and technology. It's like, what is technology? What is it? And what is school? And what is like knowledge? You know, it's like learning something. Like who even came up with all this? Like learning and math, and you know, and it's just so interesting. This world is so mysterious. Like you know, I believe humans or type of humanoids existed millions of years ago on this planet, and you know, and it says in the Bible we were created by in our image. That's multiple gods, or you can even interpret it as were we created in a lab, and now you know they're creating life in labs and humans too. So anything's possible, and I'm just gonna end that there, and just remember your ancient past, and keep your eyes open, keep your heart open, keep your mind open, and just try to find the truth out here. All of us, we're trying to find the truth. That's all we're trying to do. Trying to find somewhat the truth, somewhat to like, so we can ascend from this reality once we pass on. You know, and I was starting thinking about, okay, I'm trying to end this. I was thinking years ago, like when I started finding out these things, like maybe that's why they don't want us to ascend. Maybe that's why they want all the souls trapped on Earth. You know, and all this energy, this negative energy, the forces want, you know, like all this negative energy on Earth, spirits, destruction, and the higher realms are not open, you know, and it talks about it, like it goes up, like ascend up, and maybe they don't want us to ascend, you know, they want us to be stuck here with them and miserable, and just end it like that, and just remember your ancient past, and thank you for tuning in. I know you guys want to do this, and that's what you guys are going to do, but okay. Thank you guys, and I'll see you guys in the next one.